Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the Second Amendment and the debate over gun control. And we have with us to talk about the Second Amendment to the Constitution and the debate over gun control, Dr. LBaldwin. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, I think that you are no stranger in a real sense to what we do here.
That's right.
And I think each time that you come, we have you to give, excuse me, give us information in reference to your background, education, and experiences. And so by now, everybody should know who you are, the number of books that you've written, and what a scholar you are, and all of those good things about you. But make some statements over a couple, 3 or 4 minutes in reference to
my background.
Your background, and then we'll get into that second segment, talk about the Second Amendment to the Constitution and the debate over gun control.
Well, first, thanks for having me here. I grew up in Camden, Alabama, which is Wilcox County, Alabama. I attended the public schools, which was segregated at that time in the 1950s and 60s. Camden Academy High School, elementary school, junior high school. I graduated from Camden Academy High School in 1967. And from there, I matriculated at Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. I was there from 67 to 71, graduating in 71 with a BA in history, minor in political science, and from there to Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York. I was there from 71 to 75, receiving an MA in Black Church Studies and an MDiv in theology. And from there, of course, to Northwestern University, where I received a PhD in American Christianity in 1980. And since that time, I've been involved in teaching and scholarship. I've taught at Worcester College in Ohio, Colgate University in New York. 1984, I became a part of the Religious Studies Department at Vanderbilt University here in Nashville. And from 1984 up to December 2013, I was a professor of religious studies at Vanderbilt. Retired in December 2013, but still involved in scholarship. And over the last 30 years, I've been primarily involved in King scholarship, writing books, articles on the life of Martin Luther King, Jr., taking into account his impact on the civil rights movement, etc.
And as a matter of fact, Dr. Baldwin, the number of books, how many books have you written, Dr. Baldwin?
Well, I've written 6 books on Dr. King. I've edited 2 volumes on Dr. King. I've co-authored 2 and co-edited 2 for a total of 12 books on Dr. King. I've also written a couple of books on Black church history. One book that looks at the impact of the Negro spirituals on African American religious culture. So I've been involved primarily in writing about Black church history and, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement.
Now, Dr. Baldwin, excuse me, since this topic has to do with the Second Amendment to the Constitution and gun violence, over the next 2 minutes, say something about the Second Amendment, and then we'll continue that after the break. But start us off with that.
Well, stated more specifically, the Second Amendment says that that a regulated militia, being essential to the security of a free state, the right of the people to own and bear arms cannot be infringed. That's what it says essentially. And there's a lot of debate about what that means. A lot of people embrace what they call the individual rights theory, which says that the Second Amendment establishes the principle for individuals to own guns. But then there is the collective rights theory, which says that no, it applies to the state, because it says that the state, it's necessary for the security of the state to bear arms, and the people of America to bear arms. So there's that collective principle versus the individual principle. And I tend to agree with those who say that the Second Amendment really establishes the collective right of the state to own and bear arms.
Mm-hmm. But whether it's the individual or the state. We know, Dr. Baldwin, we have some real problems in America dealing with these guns. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break, and then we're going to allow you to come back and talk about the debate dealing with guns and gun control in America.
Very good.
And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Wish. And so when we come back, we'll have 8 minutes to do that, and just take all that 8 minutes.
Very good.
And then we'll have a break, and we'll go 10 minutes.
Very good.
Okay?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, but we're off. That's good.
Hope it's
That's
going
good.
well.
Yeah, that's good information. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Louis Baldwin, and he's giving us some information in reference to the Second Amendment to the Constitution, as well as the debate over gun control. And Dr. Baldwin, let's start off again by having you to continue your discussion in reference to the Second Amendment to the Constitution and how that has created a debate over guns.
Now, we know that the Second Amendment really didn't become a part of the Constitution until 1791, when James Madison, who would become President of the United States, really came up with this idea, and it became a part of the Bill of Rights to the Constitution. There was no debate from the very beginning about the Second Amendment. But in the 20th century, beginning in the 1970s and 80s, you began to see this debate over whether or not the Second Amendment applied to the state and its right to have a militia, or whether it applied to individuals and their right to own and bear arms. So that debate is still going on. You have pro-gun advocates who argue that guns are necessary because the Constitution supports it, and also the self-defense argument is put in place. We need guns for self-defense. And then you have those the gun rights opponents who argue that no, this is for the state. Individuals, the Second Amendment has nothing to do with individual rights to own and bear arms. Now, in 2008, in a case called the District of Columbia versus Heller, Heller, the Supreme Court came down on the side of individual rights. It ruled that individuals have a right to own and bear arms. And since that time, of course, there have been debates over whether or not we should have a concealed gun carry policy or an open gun carry policy. And unfortunately, some of the states have embraced both. Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, Georgia, all have what they call not only concealed carry laws, but open carry laws, which means that people can openly carry weapons. And we know that in Tennessee that can occur in restaurants, can occur in bars, and even in schools. Now, these used to be gun-free zones. There was a time when you couldn't carry guns in these zones, in schools and
restaurants and bars,
and restaurants,
especially in bars.
Yeah,
out of all places.
Yeah, these were gun-free zones. But now we have a policy that's spreading throughout the nation where you have this open gun policy. And I think as many as 45 states have embraced that in one form or another. And that, I think, is a very serious problem, because we're losing so many people to gun violence. And you and I talked earlier about the problems in Chicago and the loss of life due to gun violence. I think it defies the rationality that we don't come up with common sense gun control laws. And until we do that, we're going to continue to see mass shootings, mass murder, because we have such an accessibility to guns. Now, if you look at other countries like Norway and Canada and Israel, They have, guns, people, but we are the only nation in the world that worships guns. I think we have more guns per person in this country than anywhere else in the world, and we have more firearm murders in this country than anywhere else in the world. So that should be a wake-up call for us to get involved in efforts to bring about some type of gun control.
You know, Dr. Baldwin, considering when we speak of a wake-up call, I think we can say that over the last 10 years, if we have not had a wake-up call
Exactly.
to make people more conscious of the guns,
Yeah.
considering the death of children,
Exactly.
the mass murders here, the mass murders there,
Yeah.
and recently the 58 people who were killed
in Las Vegas. Yeah.
And now if that does not touch the consciousness of a nation, then I think it's going to be very, very difficult to talk about gun control until we make that happen.
Right, you're exactly right. We've had Sandy Hook, where these kids were killed. We've had, of course, the Purse nightclub in Orlando, where a lot of people were killed, and more recently in Las Vegas, which you mentioned, 58 people, actually 59, lost to gun violence. And it's all because we have not found a way to control high-powered assault weapons from getting into the hands of people who are maybe terrorists or people who are not, who have psychological problems. We have not come up with gun control laws to deal with these kinds of problems. And you have some in Congress who are arguing that the Second Amendment is unlimited when it comes to individual rights to own guns. And when you have those kinds of arguments, what can you do?
You've got guns everywhere.
Guns
it's almost
everywhere.
Impossible to, and even in Nashville here, we represent a high murder rate by guns and et cetera. What do we do?
Exactly. In the state of Tennessee, you have open carry laws. People can carry guns in bars, and now on college campuses, you have people who are advocating the carrying of guns, which makes no sense to me.
No sense at all. And especially if you've ever taught in a college camp, in a college, then you understand the kind of situation that you find yourself in a classroom.
Exactly.
And then to think that somebody might be out there who might pull out or openly show a gun. That's quite intimidating.
Yeah, I taught in colleges and universities for over 40 years before retiring in 2013, and I know it's not a good idea.
It's not a good idea at all.
Not a good idea because you don't know what the psychological state of people is. And to say that guns can be openly carried in bars and restaurants and on college campuses, to me, is absolutely insane.
And it's so intimidating. I mean, you know, for a person to walk around with a gun and on his person, that should not be. But nevertheless, as you indicated, you can do that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have a serious debate going on. We don't have it going on in the churches where it should be, where we talk about Jesus as a peacemaker. We don't have it going on in the circles of the legislature and Congress, local politics, regional politics, state national politics, because the gun lobby has a stranglehold on so many of us.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take our second commercial break, Dr. Baldwin, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the problems in reference to controlling guns. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Now, this is our 8-minute segment.
Okay.
And so just do the 8-minute like you did the 6 minutes. Just got 2 more minutes and however you wish to address it. And then after that, we'll take a break and we'll come back with 10 minutes.
Okay.
And so you've got quite enough time.
Maybe we should say, where do we go from here to 10 minutes?
Okay, good.
We continue to talk about the impact of gun violence.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Yeah, man, these guns, I tell you, I got shot here in the leg. My
Oh,
grandfather shot,
absolutely.
yeah. And so, and once you get shot with, you don't want nobody around you with no gun.
No doubt.
You know what I'm saying? All they have to say is, gun, I'm gone.
Hey, man, it's
I try to teach my
we all
grandson,
do.
everybody else that, when they say gun, you out of there.
That's
Or
right.
even if you suspect that somebody's got a gun.
That's
Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Baldwin, and he's giving us some information in reference to the Second Amendment and the efforts to control guns. And Dr. Baldwin, let's give you an opportunity here to talk about some of the aspects of gun violence in America.
I think the problem is that we have become the gun belt of the world. You and I grew up in the South, and they used to call the South the Bible Belt. But I always thought of it in terms of the gun belt, and I think that applies nationally now to us as a nation. We have become obsessed, I think, in many ways with guns. There are over 300 million guns in our society. And as you well know, there are about 300 million people.
Almost a gun for every
Yeah,
person.
we have, and you got more guns than people, as many guns as people. And there are people who see that as a good thing. They think that guns are the answer to the whole question about our salvation and our security as a nation.
These are the folks, guns don't kill people.
Yeah.
People kill people with guns.
And I argue that people with guns kill people.
Right.
You see, if you look at some of the other countries where you have very low homicide rates, in Africa and Asia, for an example, where people don't have the same kind of accessibility to guns. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that in a country where there's so much accessibility to guns, high-powered rifles, assault rifles, semi-automatic pistols like the Glock, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that the availability of guns or the accessibility of guns is the reason why we are number one in the country in terms of homicide, firearm homicides. But you have people on the so-called conservative rights who argue that there's no evidence that
In spite
guns,
of the murder rates.
exactly, that guns contribute to murder
or
rates.
Las Vegas or something,
Yeah,
58
and
folks.
so what you have here is a lack of rational thinking. We need to do some serious thinking about guns in this society, and we need people who are rational to sit around the table. When you got irrational people talking about guns, you don't come up with good answers. So if you look at Birmingham, if you look at New Orleans, if you look at Chicago, Chicago is, I think, a good case study for how guns cause what? Violence and homicide rates to go up. But we aren't getting a serious conversation about this.
Now, what keeps us from having that conversation?
And I think a lack of leadership. We don't have leadership in the churches that are willing to take on this issue. We don't have leadership in government. And when I speak of government, I'm talking about the local level, the regional, state level, the national or federal level. You don't have leaders who are willing to take this on because too many of them are in the pockets of the gun lobby.
Now, what do you mean, Dr. Baldwin, when you say the gun lobbies? We all know the NRA.
NRA is a
and
big part of it, yes.
But talk about that. Speak to that. I mean, how are they able to have the influence that they are able to have over individuals?
As you well know, money talks. And the NRA has put millions and billions into the pockets of politicians, particularly on the right side of the spectrum. And because they are receiving this support, money, they don't want to speak out. He who pays the piper calls the tune,
That's
as you
right.
well know. So I think that's the problem. The gun lobby has a stranglehold on our legislative processes. So that means, of course, that the people have to speak. And when I say the people, I mean the masses, I mean churches, I mean pastors who understand the teachings of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ said, he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. People who really understand the teachings of Jesus Christ, the masses of people must stand up and say enough. We've had too many mass shootings in this country. Most recent being, of course, 59 people in Las Vegas. But we hear, every time we have a mass shooting, we hear politicians say, well, you're in our thoughts and prayers, but they do nothing
about guns.
About assault weapon, high-powered assault weapons, semi-automatic pistols, and all of these other weapons that should be in the hands of the military.